To a big story, we are tracking our continuing coverage of the story involving a man named Kilmar Garcia, Salvadoran native who lives in Maryland, deported by the White House to El Salvador. Well, the Supreme Court ruled just last week the White House has to facilitate his return home. Our Joe St. George is live with us this morning in Washington. Of course, this comes as El Salvador's president is headed to the White House today. So what do we know about the status of this case and El Salvador's involvement in all of this?
Right, and I think what's critical to understanding the controversy here, Blaine, is remembering and noting that Mr. Garcia was wrongfully deported. And that's not an opinion, that's rooted in fact. There was a court order restricting Garcia from being deported from the Trump administration, or any administration for that matter. And the White House has acknowledged that Mr. Garcia was deported because of a, quote, administrative error. So they've acknowledged that this individual from Maryland, who'd been living in Maryland nearly 15 years, had a green card. The White House has acknowledged this individual shouldn't have been deported, but he has been. And this has been in the courts the last several weeks. A federal district judge has ordered essentially daily health updates because El Salvador is known for having one of the harshest prison systems in the entire planet. There's an obvious concern about his safety going forward. A federal district judge and the Supreme Court has weighed in as well, suggesting that the Trump administration needs to take all reasonable steps to facilitate Mr. Garcia's return to Maryland. And this is where things get interesting. On Sunday night, the Trump administration, in court filings, essentially said, well, the Supreme Court didn't tell them that they had to, let's say, send the Marines into the El Salvador prison to retrieve Mr. Garcia. It essentially said that, in their interpretation, that if Mr. Garcia would show up at a port of entry, an airport, that they would just have to let him in to the U.S., that they don't have to actually bring him out of the El Salvador prison, that El Salvador's government is actually in charge of Mr. Garcia's location at the present time. The backdrop of all of this is a meeting between El Salvador's president and President Trump a little bit later today at the White House. El Salvador increasingly becoming a key partner of the Trump administration. They've taken in north of 200 Venezuelan migrants that have been deported from the U.S. for alleged gang involvement in a gang activity. El Salvador increasingly becoming, as I noted, a key partner because they're willing to take in these individuals and put them in their prison system. I think what is interesting here going forward, and this is kind of the baseline shaping today's stories in Washington, Blaine, is does the Trump administration now think that they can deport anyone to El Salvador and then kind of wash their hands of it, because El Salvador would have to be the ones that release the individual back to the U.S. It gets complicated quickly. The Supreme Court will likely is expected to get involved here again, according to legal experts. The president will face a litany of questions regarding this a little bit later today at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Blaine.
All right, Joe St. George on top of it all for us this morning, live from Washington. 6:47 right now.